Welcome to the Weekend Sports Cars, presented by Cooper Tires on the Marshall Pruett podcast.
And this week, I've not forgotten to actually acknowledge myself. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everybody. Graham Goodwin from a windy, rainy, utterly horrible, just on the outskirts of London in the UK.
Now, if it was Randy, now that would be a new description for weather. You are headed off to play FIA World Endurance Championship here, my friend. So we are recording this a little bit earlier than usual. What are you thinking we're going to see this weekend before we get into all of our awesome listener Q&A and one other little piece of news that will have gone up by the time this posts?
Well, I think there's a lot up for grabs. First things first, we're going to see a Corvette in a 6-hour race in the FIWC for the first time in a number of years, and it won't be in yellow either. It'll be in that silver and red line livery that we've seen already kind of teased. Looking forward to seeing what we might hear and see from this Michelin tyre test that's going to happen prior to official track action in Shanghai this weekend, and also looking to see whether or not the change in equivalence technology for the privateers has made any kind of substantial difference. Let's wait and see for that one. Looking forward beyond that to the fact this is a Shanghai doubleheader. I'll be staying on in Shanghai, yippee, for the AsLMS series as well. And there'll be some additional news, possibly by the time this is actually posted, but if not, very soon afterwards, about at least one and possibly two unexpected entries for that too. So what, generally speaking, MP, is usually a kind of quiet time of the news cycle. It's been anything but over the last few days. Lots coming forward. We've got the not just in Shanghai, but also, rather remarkably, another FIA sanctioned event in the same weekend in the same country, because it's the FIA GT World Cup, home to some of the most violent scenes seen on a racetrack in recent years in GT racing in Macau on the Gaia Street circuit. 15 cars will do battle there, and we'll be bringing you more of that, I'm sure, next week's show as well.
The first motor racing street circuit with 47 cranes positioned in the same corner. That's what is required at Macau, unfortunately. But nonetheless, lots of fun there. We have a little bit of interesting development, I would say. Not the exact development we were hoping to announce. A week or so ago, Graham and I trailed the fact that we had some other news we were working on. We were hoping to announce that there was a new partnership that was going to be in place in IMSA's WeatherTech Sports Car Championship Daytona Prototype International category between the former Tequila Patron ESM team, just simply ESM these days, and another outfit to continue running the rather awesome, rather quick, and race-winning Nissan Onroc DPIs. That, unfortunately, as I wrote on Racer, has fallen through. No real details on major things about to happen with that program, Graham, but I did catch up with Scott Sharp, who acknowledged a couple of things that I'd heard, which was trucks had been sold, refueling rigs had been sold, timing stands, radios, essentially the majority of the equipment needed to run a big, serious, professional endurance racing team. Those have actually been picked up and purchased by the new Vassar Sullivan with AIM Autosport Lexus GTD team. And if you look at that reality, my friend, when you sell...
That's not a positive, is it?
Well, that tells you that approximately 2 months away from the Roar Before the 24, for those Nissan DPIs to get to Daytona, ESM, at least right now, I'm guessing they could use the equipment that they've transported their LMP3 cars with and such, but by and large, even the basic transportation tools to get the cars there are now in possession of someone else, along with all the, most of the things needed to run those DPIs. So if that is the case, it sounds like they are in a position of, as Scott mentioned, truly in continuing to search for a partner. And it sounds like that partner would then need to take those cars and hopefully already own the trucks, have the rest of the equipment, and provide the infrastructure that ESM has downsized or sold. And so we are not making any grand proclamations here that Nissan will not be the fourth manufacturer on the grid to start the 2019 IMSA season. But it certainly sounds, Graham, like with those other assets now gone, with the one major team that was looking to partner having had to step away, and I'm told there will be, possibly some announcements about the other things they're going to do coming somewhat soon. Sounds like ESM is in a position where either those cars will be sold and someone else will run them independently. A scenario Scott said could happen. A partner will be found to run those cars in conjunction with ESM. We could have the best case scenario of a sponsor late in the year come in, and or well-funded drivers come in to allow ESM to borrow, rent, whatever equipment to keep running those cars. Or the fourth scenario, nothing happens. Those cars just sit, and we kick off the season with 3 manufacturers instead of the 4 that we ended it with. I think most would agree we love the third scenario most of all. Big infusion of cash in the absence of Tequila Patron, and ESM gets back and going again. I would say that while that's the hope and dream, my friend, it might be a little bit naive to think that kind of turnaround is going to happen fast enough for them to make the mandatory roar 2 months from now.
Yeah, and let's not forget this is a multiple race-winning team in recent years, and the big races at that, MP. And if it were to be one of the less palatable scenarios that came forward, that would mark a real downer in the IMSA paddock. I'm sure that's fair to say. We already knew, of course, Tequila Patron moving away with the commercial decision made by the parent company. The new parent company of Tequila Patron, but that's a big miss and a big name in that paddock. If one of those, it must be said at this point, MP, more likely scenarios actually did come to pass. Let's hope not. I know there's a lot of good people putting in a lot of hard work, but that clock is ticking ever louder, isn't it?
So before we get into our finely curated list of questions broken into categories by our man, Graham Goodwin of DailySportsCar.com, we kicked off something new last week. Our pals at RacingMugs.com, no, not cartoon caricatures of our ugly faces, but actual drinking mugs, coffee mugs, have offered to kindly send mugs to one listener per week, whomever's question we liked the most from the previous episode. So I'll go ahead and kick this off this week, Graham. Next week, the decision will be all yours.
Oh, the pressure.
I know. And granted, we don't inform the person who wrote in. They must be listening and hear that they had yes. So don't tip off Rob Horn.
Don't tell him. Don't tell him.
Exactly. So Rob, we certainly loved your question last week of, with the Spice Girls announcing a reunion, which sports car team or set of drivers would you like to see a reunion of? His would be the Audi Le Mans team, just one more race. So that was fun. We had some fun conversation with that, Rob. So send one of us a direct message with your address, and we will get a Rodney Sandstorm mug sent your way. You get to drink out the top of Rodney's head. We'll get that sent your way quickly from our friends at racingmugs.com.
I'm just going to dive in as well, by the way, and thank everybody for their interaction, particularly on Twitter. For much of the week, in fact, following up the question we didn't get to answer on air, but we did say we'd take it to the Twitterati, and boy, did they turn up the goods. That was effectively your sports car drivers and personalities as confectionery. And yet we did get some real crackers there. We'll probably try that one again at some point, but bumper bundle again, MP, of questions from, the wonderful people on the Reddit groups, the Blancpain, the USCR and the WEC subgroups. Thanks again, ladies and gentlemen, for your comments and indeed your questions from Facebook and from Twitter. And it's another, lengthy list here of questions covering a variety of subjects: the IMSA, the world of IMSA, the world of the WEC and the ACO. There's a couple of TWISC specific questions which we'll get to as well. And then, as usual, a whole range of general questions and some more light-hearted stuff that we'll try and wade our way through in the, absolutely exactly 90 minutes to come.
100%, no matter what. And since we meaning me, failed at that last week, let's genuinely, truly try and stick to 90 minutes. And so
in fairness, we do try. We do try.
Yes, like most things in my life, there is great intent before the failure. I think I chose our leading category last week, which means it is your turn, my friend, to tell us where we're starting.
Let's kick it off with the ACO stuff this week. There's actually fewer questions, I suspect, because we've got racing coming at the weekend. My guess is we'll have plenty of stuff to fall out from Shanghai next weekend. But it's quite a mixed bag. It's last week, as you might well imagine, MP, a lot about the car, hypercar, Glickenhaus announcements that were made, and there's been a little bit more information given by Jim Glickenhaus and his merry men. And I hope to bring you some more details of that in due course, certainly this side of Christmas.
Well, with you being our resident ACO FIA expert, that was the French pronunciation, by the way, why don't I serve you up a couple for us to get going here? First one goes to War Eagle 33X. That's a Remembrance Week right there.
That's a Veterans Day name right there.
If this is a 9-year-old, sending in questions with that name, I'll just say you're up for a life of awesomeness. And if you're an adult, then I apologize. War Eagle 33X says, is there any kind of word on Corvette Racing entering the Sebring 1000, that being the Friday WEC portion of the traditional Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring Saturday IMSA event? We've spoken about it, but have you gotten any further insights on whether it's going to be a thing?
I suspect it might very well be a thing. I think we'll find out more this coming weekend. There is absolutely no confirmation. The only thing I can tell you, I think I've said this before on the show, is that I know that more than one team has been refused an entry for the WEC race at Sebring because they say they're full beyond the full season entries. Now, remember, those full season entries nominally at the moment include not one but two Ginettas. There are still moves underway to fill at least one of those slots and possibly both of them. So there is certainly, I'm aware of another car that is hoping to join the total. At the moment, there's definitely at least one prototype that's not a full season entry that wants to come out to play. There is a GT team that has had an entry turned down. I can happily tell you that's the second Gulf UK Porsche 911 RSR. I've been told there is not room for them on the entry. And so I strongly suspect we might well be getting an announcement that Corvette will indeed be doing a double header. I think we might also be seeing a few guest entries for the Sebring 12 Hours later on that weekend as well. I have to say, after all the kind of the naysaying and the kind of bitterness that's been around this, I'm now really looking forward to this race meeting, and I think it could be one heck of a weekend. We'll wait and see whether or not this is something that becomes a more permanent part of the WEC calendar. I think that might be a decision that finally falls out from just how well it goes this coming March. But let's wait and see. So nothing we can tell you with certainty. Watch this space for whether or not we get a bit more of an indication this weekend from the fine folks at Corvette Racing over in China.
Next question, certainly piggybacking off of Saturday's announcement at the Brazilian Grand Prix, that one Fernando Alonso will be making his second attempt to win the Indy 500 next May. So Zach Anderson asks, with Mr. Alonso doing Indy again, Do you think it's likely he will stay with Toyota for the 2019-2020 season?
Well, they want him to. That's not the same thing, of course, as him saying yes. And I think they want him to for a number of reasons. One is, you know what? Whatever else, he's darn quick. And that's a good thing. Two is, he's very good news in terms of Toyota getting their message across. And let's face it, what's been a difficult time in LMP1 to get storylines of a positive nature out there. So I think they'd like him to. Whether or not he decides to do it, I suspect depends very much on how much fun he's actually having doing this. The indication at the moment is he's enjoying his racing in the WEC, and it has been racing between those two Toyotas at least. Could be big fun if they could sort out the EOT. Whether or not there's an opportunity to do that, let's wait and see. But at the moment, again, the decision that matters is going to be coming from one person and one person alone, and that's Mr. Fernando Alonso. We know he's stepping away from Formula One. Let's wait and see whether or not he decides a second year in sports cars might be something that meets, finds his happy side. It would be nice to see a few more, by the way, in the mainstream media acknowledge the fact that he's actually been running this full season for an FI World Championship. It's extraordinary, the level of interest, particularly from the BBC, I should say, MP, an organisation I hold dear for their enlightened outlook very often on a whole range of things, that despite regularly talking about Fernando and his choices and moving away from here, there and everywhere, routinely and repeatedly refuse to acknowledge the fact that he is still racing in a parallel campaign and is leading an FI World Championship. Extraordinary stuff. Not quite sure what that's all about.
Almost a 3-time world champion, 2 in F1, 1 in WEC. Let's go to Ryan Terpstra, who's coming off of the awesome announcement last week of James Glickenhaus and the Scuderia Cameron Glickenhaus intent to be the first car manufacturer involved, the 2020 hypercar regs. Ryan says, can we talk about other boutique manufacturers who we think might be good candidates to compete against James Bond? That's what he's calling it, the SEG 007. Just curious if there are other boutique-ish manufacturers like SCG that stand out to you or me for possible entry. And I guess to that end, I'm not sure how we would define boutique. I mean, I know Aston Martin, for example, is a small volume producer. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't call them boutique, though. No. So anyone else jump out, either that you've heard of, Graham, or that you think should consider?
Well, one that I've heard of, which we've heard because we've written about it, we've spoken about it on this show, which is Koenigsegg. Now, we don't yet know whether Christian von Koenigsegg has got as clear a view as Jim Glickenhaus did of where the rules are actually at, or whether or not he thinks he can convert a road car, which he can't, or whether or not he's aware that this would be something based on a carbon fiber racing chassis. So Koenigsegg have certainly shown some interest in looking at the regulations. Beyond that, I think this is going to come down probably less likely to a manufacturer of that sort of size wanting to invest the, 20 million euros or more in a program, and more likely to be something that possibly somebody like Orica or Ligier find as some form of branding around a current or future privateer entry. And in that regard, I mean, yeah, you could look at people like Pagani. I mean, the one that I think people would be screaming into their laptops, which I think is what most people or their mobile devices, TVR, because of course Rebellion Racing have this co-branding with TVR, an re-emerging force in sports car construction in the UK under Chairman Les Edgar, with a long history behind him of getting interested in racing with TVR. And I'm pretty certain it was Les that came forward with the project for a mid-engined Aston Martin, which begat, and I'm sure listeners will shoot me down in flames if I'm wrong here, the Saleen S7R. I think that was Les Edgar. So a man that completely understands the value of motorsport in establishing a brand. If I had to bet, I wouldn't bet against TVR being somewhere in the mix at some point 2020 and beyond.
Well, as someone whose father bloodied many knuckles on TVRs. That would be, I would love to see it, just because, I guess, in line with Ryan's thinking, having these giant manufacturers involved, that's great, that's fun. It's really healthy stuff that fuels the sport in so many ways. But I also do love the little Davids that come in. They are the ones that I find myself rallying around, just because they're so much fun. They're so awesome.
It's the Paynos thing, isn't it? I mean, having been at Le Mans when Paynos were there, as this emergent force, the goodwill towards that brand, who had absolutely no real cut through as an original equipment manufacturer of their road cars, beyond the pages of some of the glossy monthlies. The goodwill trackside for those cars was immense, and in part it's because it was that little team that could. In part the fact that the cars just looked awesome and sounded even more awesome. I hope what we're going to get when we get into the 2020 regulations time is that we've got cars that look very different, which is the whole intent, but sound very different. I'll be very disappointed if what we get is, another grid of, underwhelming turbocharged V8s.
So we've got 4 ACO questions left. I'll take 2. One of them that I think I might be able to answer quickly. The other one, because you should not be the one to answer that.
Hang on a minute. You've got 5 because we have a late one.
Oh, well.
Okay.
Let me take the 2 that I know of, and the other 3 will be all yours. David Shutt asks, with all the talk about Alonso's Triple Crown attempt, do you think we'll ever see Montoya make an LMP1 attempt at Le Mans to try and win that, to take a Triple Crown honor himself? Really easy one here. 3 quick points to make, David. One, Juan Montoya doesn't particularly care about Triple Crowns or anything else. He just wants to win races. 2, yes, I could see it if Roger Penske decides he is going to go to Le Mans with a manufacturer that has hired Team Penske to do so, while Juan happens to be under his employ. And 3, if Juan decides he is done or tired or just wants a change and wants to leave Team Penske, then I would absolutely imagine a Toyota or other major manufacturer involved in future LMP1/car hypercar goodness would certainly give him a look, knowing that there was a strong shot of him joining the Porsche LMP1 program had that continued. So if it's with Roger, great. I also don't know, coming off of a year where I don't think Juan had as much fun as he had hoped in IMSA, in DPI. I don't know, David, if he is truly looking at, the next 5-10 years of my life, I'm just going to keep doing this over and over again. Like me, he has a little bit of I don't want to say short attention span, but after a couple years of doing something, needs to find either a change to keep himself motivated and interested, or there has to be some new target to hit, because that's just something that we've seen from him many, many times. Not a bad thing. If anything, it's been part of his charm. He's always looking for new challenges. So either with Penske, if something happens there, or if he grows tired of his current Penske deal and wants to try something else, would not be surprised to see him with a big manufacturer in LMP1. I just don't believe there will be a Triple Crown aspect to it at all. Our friend Stuart Hart, and this is the part where, as someone who provides commentary for FIA WEC rounds, we won't have that person responding here. Stuart asks, any discussion about offering greater value with the FIA WEC app? It is a paid service, should offer practice coverage, even if it's just onboards. The series should also offer onboards free of charge on the app or YouTube, especially when Formula E, Blancpain, and ALMS, I wish ALMS is still here, Stuart, IMSA offers it for free. I do not have any inside information about any upcoming changes, Stuart. I would just offer this little bit of external commentary. Since we've had Porsche pull out from its big spending ways in LMP1, since they've lost Audi, I know that money is certainly an area where the FIA has tried to cut as many costs, and is also, I guess, the inverse of that, not just trying to cut costs, but also trying to not find ways to spend more, would certainly be a big part of accommodating their budget to the changes they have been presented with over the last couple of years. So I don't disagree with anything you've said. I would just mention that, if we're talking IMSA, for example, they've had one television partner. It's a domestic series, but they've had one television partner. Very easy to suss that out. One broadcaster, one solution for all things. Formula E, some of the other international series like the FIA, maybe not as easy to get everything sorted, rights for all of those things and delivery on all of those things. But I can't disagree with the sentiment here, especially when you have, to me, the FIA WEC, which is right up top with, we look at Formula One, NASCAR, MotoGP, you could even say IndyCar. There are five or six true top motorsports series to enjoy, and some of them do a great job of delivering everything properly through streaming. Not as many as we would hope happen to tick all the boxes in that category. And I would also say, Stuart, that when with some of what you've mentioned, second tier, even possibly third tier categories are doing a better job in that area, it would certainly expose some of the things that you wish an app like this would provide. So I can't give you any insight as to whether there are changes coming. I am sure that if there are, our man Mr. Goodwin at dailysportscar.com will be among the first to write about it. But yeah, as Graham says quite often, with class, with grace, don't hesitate to continue to mention this on social media to the leaders, as you've done.
Absolutely.
But for others, don't hesitate, as you have, a great example here, to just continue to let the leaders of the ACO/FIA WEC know that, hey guys, I think you could do a little bit better, or I'm used to getting more from others, and you are bigger than those entities. When do you think you might be able to reach what's becoming maybe a standard level of expectation? So not a bad thing at all. And off to you, Mr. Goodwin, with your questions.
Yeah, we'll kick off with my little batch with Matthew Hawkins, who says, with Glickenhaus confirming intentions of the 2021 regulations, when would we see these cars on track? Le Mans 2020 or the start of that 2020 season? Well, I think you mean 2020, 2021, because, of course, we're now moving into this winter season cycle where the season ends with Le Mans and starts probably in about August, September moving forward. We are expecting to see those cars on track no sooner, or at least in competition, no sooner than that September 2020. So they would race Le Mans for the first time in 2021. So what that means, of course, Matthew, is we've got another season to come with more or less the mix that we've got. In answer to questions I know that have been voiced elsewhere about, if Toyota came forward, for instance, and said, could we enter the car early? I've been told very specifically they would not be allowed to do that. That would not be something that would be up for grabs. We might see those cars publicly. We might even see some of those cars demonstrated earlier, but they would not be permitted to compete, and there certainly would be no credence given to balancing the current cars back, because the new hypercars will be significantly slower than the current batch of LMP1 cars. So it will be September 2020 for the 2020-2021 season. Jonathan Wensley asks about, accustomed to the cyclical boom-bust nature of previous WC iterations, it seemed lessons have been learned, making LMP1 more secure. Did Dieselgate hasten on an inevitable demise? Could LMP1 have evolved, negating the enforced root and branch regulations changes we're currently seeing? In 2015, it felt bulletproof. It did. And I think two or three things happened. Dieselgate certainly had a part to play, despite widespread denials elsewhere. The vertical curve of development certainly had a part to play, and so did the spend that fueled that vertical development curve. And I do find it slightly distasteful when some of the people involved in fueling that development curve were the same people that decried the budgets that were required. It's a fundamentally different philosophy that fuels where we're going for the next cycle, which is you can, if you like, go and spend that kind of money, but it's not going to make your car any quicker, because what we're going to do now is we're not going to performance balance the package that you're bringing. The performance balance is going to be provided by the framework of performance which is going to be allowed. There are going to be peaks, caps on a whole range of values that mean that truly, if, let's say, Jim Glickenhaus and his merry band come forward and can get a car anywhere close to the top end of that performance window and can do that reliably, then they should be able to put the Glickenhaus James Bond in a position where it could win races, including the very biggest races. Now, if that can work and we get enough players to come forward, that is something that we've not had for many, many, many years. As for what went wrong here, I think a lot of it was to do with that development curve. It all got a bit silly, I think, once we had Porsche and Audi banging heads from within the same company. That was predictably something which was not going to be allowed to continue at the levels that spend was going on from within the same VAG family. And of course, when Dieselgate hit, that was principally, initially at least, a scandal that hit the very same company. Trailing along somewhere in the wake of that was Toyota, and Toyota, of course, been getting the rough end of the stick in terms of some of the public commentary when none of this is their fault. So it's a real sadness to me that couldn't be sustained. We had absolutely awesome world-class racing between three awesome world-class teams and factories for several seasons, the like of which I have never seen in my lifetime in the part of the sport that I adore. It's gone. We remain to be seen whether or not what's coming next or what's coming after that can come anywhere close to repeating that kind of level of entertainment. I hope it can. Final one, the one that you're missing on your curated questions, it came in quite late, comes from our old mate Floodman on the Reddit WEC group. And thanks very much, by the way, for your kind words on there about the comments we passed for your questions last week, Floodman. Questions about the Corvette's BOP for this weekend at Shanghai. You might have some things to say about this one, MP. The only WEC data they have is from Le Mans, correct, which isn't relevant for, well, places that aren't Le Mans. Did the WEC BOP crew get some data from IMSA? Did they go off some older data when Labra ran the car in GTM? Or have they kind of eyeballed it and said, this will work probably, ? This comes off the back of BOP being determined for Shanghai, which sees the Corvettes running relatively heavy. Now, I know what my answer for this one, without actually having asked the question, is. I don't know what you think, MP, but for my answer to this one is, look, if you were Corvette racing and you knew you were coming into that situation, you make darn sure that the powers that be here got all the data that you've got available, which, remember, has been balanced pretty effectively in IMSA against at least part of the grid that you're going to be faced up against, because 3 of the other 4 cars have been present through IMSA competition in this past season. I think you make very sure indeed that all the data they could get was made available to them, so that finger in the wind was actually digitally fed, if you like. I don't know about you, MP.
If I was a proper reporter, I would have asked this question to the Corvette racing team in IMSA, and I feel bad to invoke something that is an actual excuse, but today, Monday the 12th, is actually the first day I've been able to go into the office in the morning without really having to focus on anything else family-wise and such, so that's a positive. I just probably haven't been as plugged into such things, but I like to think that would have occurred to me as a question to ask beforehand, but maybe not. I have 0 for you here. Unfortunately, I readily raise my hand and admit that I suck. I would say for sure, though, just from a practical standpoint, Corvette's presence and the addition to the grid in Shanghai, I'm very confident the ACO and FIA will be more than appreciative of that. I do not think that they would go out of their way to ensure the Corvette was equal or over advantage, I should say, to any of the other cars. But the concern is certainly rightful. We've seen this at Le Mans a couple of times in recent years where the Corvettes have just been murdered come race day, neutered almost. And what I would say is positive, the thing that I think maybe gets to the answer without knowing all the details as to whether IMSA data has been shared or the team has tried to share data, with the more willing approach demonstrated throughout 2018, especially on the LMP1 side with EOT, we have seen a far more reactive and responsive sanctioning body when it comes to balancing, aligning cars. I can only hope that that reactiveness is something that would be in place and continue, if needed, this weekend once the Corvettes hit the track. Of course, you have a full championship going on. We're winding down this year's portion of the multi-year championship, but we're in a place where there is a proper championship raging on. And none of those, I'm sure all of those manufacturers, the minute that they read either on DSC or elsewhere that, hey, Corvette's sending a car to Shanghai, that every brand sent emails into Vincent Beaumenil and his team saying, you better not let those fools show up and whoop our butt and take big helpings of points. At the same time, knowing that there's definite questions, what could or would a Corvette program be when the C8R comes along? Could it include WEC? There's so many masters to serve here, Graham. There's no easy answer, but I would just hope that if we do see the C7R is off the pace, legitimately off the pace, that the new and more reactive ACO-FI technical team will say, all right, we're not going to wait until the checkered flag to determine that we should have helped. Let's see what we can do and try and make the race a little bit more appetizing. Bottom line, though, Corvette is not spending this money to field a car in Shanghai to try and appeal to an incredibly important and growing market for them, and then have that C7R fart around, mid-pack with the GTE AM entries.
Totally agree. And I think the other quick thing to say here is, historically, the WEC have been very interested in getting GM to step up to a full WEC season effort with whatever it is they choose to field. Getting them out there in a state of BOP that would embarrass them is not a smart move if that's what the game is, and I don't believe that's the case. They've clearly sent their A game. You don't send Ollie Gavin and Tommy Milner out there if actually what you're planning to do is to have the guys wander around at half speed and wave to the crowd. You're going out there to race. I expect them to race. I expect them to be in the mix, and I'm thoroughly looking forward to it, because the way that the Shanghai International Circuit is set out is you'd be able to hear that thing coming, and we do like that.
Well, let me pick our next group, because it's very short and very easy to answer, and then we'll move to another meatier collection of questions that you have collated for us, my friend. I'm going to go ahead and go with the aptly titled #TWISC specific, TWISC being the Week in Sports Cars. Two questions here, one from Justin Ford, one from David Johnston 8, and Justin says, live podcast at Daytona, ? And David asks, tickets and RV spot booked for Sebring. Can I add a TWISC live event to my plans? I am flying from London after all. Well, we weren't going to do one at Sebring, David, but the fact that you're flying in from London, we're going to absolutely do it just for you, for no other reason. No one else, and you're actually going to be the only one invited. We're just going to have one chair set out, and it's just for you. Granted, if there are multiple David Johnstons coming in from the UK, well, maybe, we'll figure out a wrestling match or arm wrestling. But, Justin, for Daytona to start, I don't have times or the exact location, but there will absolutely be a live Week in Sports Cars podcast. And I can mention this because it's going to be effectively a makeup show. We had one fully planned for Petit Le Mans, something that Mazda reached out and asked and inquired and then ultimately commissioned us to do. And so it was going to be awesome there. With the full endurance racing lineup, had Marino Franchitti, etc. We were going to do it up on the hill, going to have 6-7 drivers. We were also going to have, he agreed to be there, Mazda racing legend, multiple champion Jim Downing, based in nearby Georgia. So that was going to be amazing. And I'll also mention this just because it will be a carryover as well. Mazda inquired on the costs, and I said, well, as much as we would love to be paid for this, and trust me, we will be paid for others, but I said for this, let's do something a little bit different, because we just want to make this a fun thing that's also a give-back thing to close the season. Now it's going to turn out to be an open the season. And that was, instead of paying the Marshall Pruett podcast to put on a live event, said, well, why don't you take that money, speak with my friends and our friends at TorontoMotorsports.com that do the Week in IndyCar and Week in Sports Car t-shirts for us, and why don't we do a custom giveaway t-shirt? And so that's exactly what the fine artist Roger Warwick did. He took our Week in Sports Cars logo and replaced the rather generic kind of LMP2, some folks said it's a Ligier LMP3, which it's clearly not, but kind of Ligier-ish looking LMP2 model, and replaced that with a gorgeous, spot-on Mazda RT 24P. And so those t-shirts were commissioned. I believe they're all made, just without me there. Obviously, with what we were dealing with at home here with my wife at the time, we're going to still have all those t-shirts. And this is just going to be a make-up Petit Le Mans live Week in Sports Car episode at Daytona with Graham Goodwin, yours truly, and hopefully a whole bunch of awesome Mazda drivers there in the lineup. And who knows, we might invite someone else. Scott Atherton, IMSA president, was going to be there as well, so maybe we can get Scott. Maybe we could still get Jim Downing or another Mazda legend. But anyways, so yes, bottom line is, we will certainly have one at Daytona, Justin, and I think something in the range of 75 t-shirts were printed, so I can't say it will be enough for everybody, but there will definitely be a pretty cool giveaway there, all courtesy of Mazda. And then, David, we haven't spoken about Sebring yet, but I can pretty much guarantee you, Graham and I will plan on doing something, and I know that IMSA is very keen on working with us to put on more of these live Week in Sports Car podcast events. So that's a little bit more of a TBD, but when you have Graham, when you have MP in the same location, of course we're going to sit there and talk and ramble in public about the things that we love. So
absolutely.
All right, where shall we go next, my friend?
I think we should go to IMSA.
I have never heard about this championship you speak of.
I'm not sure what it stands for, but it's something to do with racing in North America, I think.
Okay. Well,
bit of action over the weekend, MP, which was good to see, with Michelin stepping up. And I know there's a couple of questions that reference the Michelin Encore. Let's kick it off, though. I'm going to just serve them to you like a kind of Roger Federer type backup person. IMSA switches to Michelin for all classes next year. Remember the GTLM being offered multiple compounds for their race events. Good Old Continental only offered one compound of slicks. Josh, the bassist, says. Ice Coffee pops in with, they were told to make only one, to be fair. He says, will Michelin offer up the same multiple compounds for the other GTD and prototype classes?
Still something that I'm looking to gain information on, Josh, and it's from a lack of asking. I know that there will be ranges, as Michelin has offered in prototype, for example, and has offered in GTLM all along, of temperature-specific compounds. So that being maybe a little bit different than true different constructions and such. I believe so. GTD is the only area where I'm genuinely blind here and need to gain knowledge on, but I do know that having spoken with Ken Payne from Michelin about this, that yes, there will be, I believe, more of a hot and cold those being in reaction to hot or cold ambient temperatures. More of that hot, medium, cool compound offering like they've done in GTLM. So I know that for the Pro classes, if there's going to be anything different for the LMP2 Pro-Am or GTD Pro-Am, that I cannot say. And I also don't believe that since the DPIs are all LMP2 based, that Michelin would specifically restrict some options in LMP2 and then make that available in DPI. So once I get a better feel for GTD, then I can speak with vague authority here. But I can't imagine that they would go away from just that general line of thinking and offering of trying to give their teams options based on the ambient temperatures that they face, because the flip side is, Graham, if you restrict that and just say this is one tire fits all, well, performance seems to suffer, and that would penalize some cars more than others, depending upon their layout and the track that they happen to be at. So I think there's going to be, without a huge increase, but definitely a greater effort to give teams customization through compound.
Go to a couple of questions on a slightly different tack before we get into IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship stuff. One from Nathan Barnes and the other one from Alex Eichmiller, and they're in your curated list at the top and the bottom here, MP. Nathan was watching the IMSA Encore at Sebring, the Michelin event from this last weekend. Says he's really digging having the P3s in with the GT4 and TCR cars, and a merger of those series could make a great mini WeatherTech, says Nathan, with slower GT traffic for the up-and-coming P3s to deal with, gain experience in traffic before jumping to the big show. Do you think it could be feasible to bring the P3s and NPC cars together in the future for a combined series? Alex, by the way, adds a similar but not exactly the same point, asking whether or not we can see any prospect of the LMP3 cars being run as a top class in the Michelin Pilot Challenge or Pilote Challenge in the future. What do you reckon, MP?
Having been able to watch a little bit of the start of the race on Sunday and then watch almost all the half hour, unfortunately, IMSA's Facebook broadcast cut off halfway through the final lap. I would say it's worth considering. I don't think it's a bad idea, but I think it would need to be situational based on the circuits. So watching this, I thought the same thing. Hey, the P3s are fast enough to where they could fairly easily deal with GT4 and below type cars. And so that seemed to be proven out. It's been a question, there was an idea a couple of years ago floated by IMSA internally and among teams. Hey, what if we were to stick our mini prototype class into the Conti series? And general feeling was, you're absolutely creating a headache for yourself and damage and mayhem. If we're talking Sebring, big sprawling track. If we're talking Daytona, if we're talking Watkins Glen, Mosport, Road America, I would say probably Petit Le Mans as well at Road Atlanta, then yes. Any of the smaller, twistier, tighter circuits, I would say that's where the big divergence in speed, braking capability, just all of the things that lead to, oh my goodness, look what happened at the Apex when the guy in the P3 car thought the person in the TCR thing saw them and didn't. We, I think, had the best worlds demonstrated last weekend, or Sunday, at Sebring, and by and large it was due to the circuit they were on. If we had this at Belle Isle in Detroit, it would be a 2-hour caution period. At Lime Rock, same exact thing, where you're just stumbling over one another. There aren't long enough straights for the big faster cars to stretch their legs, so it's just folks constantly on top of each other, having to take bigger risks to get by. So do I think it could happen? Yes. I'll just also add that with the potential of what LMP3 could be, Graham, knowing that the vast majority of the grid for the Michelin Encore was all LMP3 based, if the series continues to be one that has more entries and is growing and growing, I'd say that would be the one detracting point to say, yeah, let's not do it. Because if we have, a healthy, hopefully, Conti grid with those GT4 cars, with TCR, etc., if we have health there, throwing in 20 other LMP3s, obviously it would be a big old grid. But I think it'd be hard to justify that knowing that the car count in P3 alone warranted having a standalone race.
Having seen we've got mixed grids, of course, with GT3 cars, GTD in US money, in the Michelin Le Mans Cup in Europe, that works pretty well. The offset I'd offer here, Alex and Nathan, is that, remember, there were only 20 cars on that grid, and it did work pretty well. I watched a part of it, and it did seem to flow very nicely. I think if you were going to do it, and I like the idea of a mini WeatherTech, I'll tell you what I like more, which is the idea of a mini NAEC, which is more or less what MP's actually laid out there, which is that actually what you do is you bring the grid together for 2 or 3 banner events, and only that it's a series within a series. That I like. That is what would encourage, I think, people to come forward and come through and use it as a true staircase. But it is all about the infrastructure. Absolutely right, MP, and it's about whether or not the grid would be just too crowded for that to flow. It sounds a great idea, but it seems rather less great idea if what you're dealing with at the end of every race is a dumpster full of carbon fiber.
Unless you and I take over the spare parts concessions, and then
in which case
it's the best
idea.
Race ever. We want the smallest.
Do it now.
We want half-mile road courses and minimum entries of 100 cars. Yes, we will be retiring soon. Where shall we go next, my friend?
Let's go for iced coffees. 2 questions, both about DPI. Actually, if you were a prospective manufacturer thinking about DPI, MP, what's the biggest incentive to enter the series right now, and what's the biggest deterrence besides cost? He makes clear.
Yeah, stripping cost away is honestly that's the primary thing. If it happened to be 2 or 3 things, I could probably come up with a proper answer. It's not that I want to fall back to cost, but the reason that any manufacturer would look at it seriously, first and foremost, long before anything else, would be cost. So taking that away, you essentially would take away any major justification you could offer. So I don't dislike the question. Again, please, it is a great question, but the proviso of no cost means that we effectively don't have a DPI grid. So if I'm looking at some of the other things that are well below that you might consider reason to get in, and also some possibly to get out, the move to NBC Sports, I believe, is going to help and is going to be a boost on ratings. I cannot say this because nobody knows. I cannot say what that's going to mean when we see some of the early numbers. Daytona has often been pretty good on Fox because they'll throw it on via big network and use that to drum up some really good eyeballs for an hour or 2 to start, maybe, or maybe towards the end. What we haven't seen, Graham, is the overnight numbers be really strong. What we haven't seen is when we get to some of the just normal standard events. Hey, we're going to pick the place. We're going to Monterey, or we're going to wherever. It's those numbers that, under the now former broadcaster, they were often so low, they were just not. There was nothing to offer. It would be below a 0.1 Nielsen rating, and that's not casting aspersions. That's just reality. I think that with NBC Sports putting IMSA's WeatherTech Championship on its big network more often than the series has been in previous years with Fox, I think that's going to help. I also think the NBC Sports channel is one that, with IndyCar there, with NASCAR there for about half the season, and some other things, I think that they can do more to try and lead in from certain events place the timing of the start of an IMSA event, provided there's a healthy or bigger sporting event that would be on that folks could just roll right into or hopefully stick with. I think we can see an improvement in Nielsen ratings, and that is, honestly, Graham, that is critical to the long-term health of IMSA. Why? Well, we have the two dynamics that is so often the way in which sports car racing is paid for. Either a manufacturer getting in or wealthy gentlemen and gentlewomen drivers spending money. What we haven't seen, and I'm talking IMSA right now, but we've seen this in many other series, what we haven't seen are major sponsors. Recognizable names that have come in not because the CEO's son or daughter is racing for Team X, but just true, hey, we see sound business values in being a part of your championship. That's the thing that we have struggled, in particular with IMSA, since it was relaunched in 2014. If we can move the needle at all with NBC Sports being in charge of TV, that would be transformational for IMSA, because now, and really for the first time, Graham, instead of just being able to speak with potential sponsors about business-to-business dealings, there would be an opportunity, in theory, for manufacturers, for independent teams, for whomever to go to these household names, brand name companies and say, hi, spend money with us as a sponsor. We have enough eyeballs to offer back for you to know that you're getting a decent audience in the sector that matters to you. That has not been possible for years. That would be huge. So that would be a potential incentive. But back to the question here, we're going to need to get through a couple of races before we can see if that feels like it's going to happen. I would say if we're talking deterrent, I don't see many. What I just mentioned about TV could be one. What kind of eyeballs are we going to have? Attendance could be another. If I have to be really honest, there are some races, we've spoken about this before, where it looks like they forgot to open the gates. Like, oh, hey, who has the key? Let them in. There are some events that you go to and you go, oh boy, yeah. And doesn't mean we don't love the sport, but it just means that there aren't many folks showing up in person to express that love. That could be one. Depending on which race you might attend, or which one that a potential advertiser or sponsor or manufacturer or whomever might want to review, Graham, from 2018, 17, and so on. There are some rounds where, yeah, you hit slow-mo and you look at the cars flashing by the grandstand and realize, I count 4 people. Or you look at the folks standing along the fences up close, or if there are clusters of people that may say at that track with a different racing series there is normally full, and then you cut to the IMSA weekend and you say, ooh, that's a little bit light. There could be some concerns there for sure. Also, there's some events that are amazing, and you go, yes, this is great. They love us. They really love us. The hills are packed. The grandstands are seemingly full. We have those too. So we're not proclaiming by any sense that everything is perfect. Everything is awesome. But I would say, if you're looking at the things to come in, cost is number one. You can do it fairly inexpensively. But there's a potential for TV being a big thing. Also potential for the needle to not move as much as we had hoped. And beyond that, that's about it.
It's why, basically, isn't it? Why it's a game we can all play. It is about getting behind the vision, getting behind the business plan, supporting those sponsors that do come, because no one's in this business to get this to fail. Yes, mistakes are sometimes made, but no one's in it to fail. I mean, to be honest with you, Ice Coffee's second question is more or less answered by exactly the point you just made, which is he asked what the possibilities are in the future of seeing teams like Acura Team Penske, Mazda Team Yerster, and adding a third car for the big enduro races like Sebring or Daytona. We've seen this, of course, in the past with Penske back in the RS Spider days, but it's going to be budget-led, isn't it?
It absolutely is, my man. It absolutely is. The other thing I'd add quickly on this, Graham, if you look at how many Cadillacs are expected to be on the grid for DPI next season, the specter of winning the manufacturer's championship, it's effectively over from the moment the season will begin with so many quality Cadillacs. So I would say that yes, in terms of just improving the odds of winning for an Acura, for a Mazda, hopefully a Nissan, if something there were to happen, you would have to look at going beyond the Noah's Ark 2x2 approach that they've all had, especially at the big races. And yeah, if anybody wants to knock down Cadillac, they're going to have to put more quality cars in the DPI field to make that happen. Without it, again, Manufacturers' Championship is more or less over before it started. Let's go to Greg LB310. I'm thinking that's Long Beach, area code 310, but I could be wrong. Any news about Signatech Alpine Matmut in a potential program for the Rolex 24 Daytona? Greg says, I saw several videos of them racing in this past weekend's HSR Classic 24. I can't recall of them being at any Daytona or IMSA event. And if they were to participate, would they be considering DPI since they have an Alpine branded Oreca? And this is my ignorance. Did they participate in the HSR Classic 24, or was that just an ex-Signatech Alpine branded vehicle or liveried vehicle?
It was that. They've got a very keen collector of their ex and recently ex racing machinery, and it was that. I think it's a guy called Florent Moulin who picks up a lot of the ex Alpine stuff. So the answer is you're quite right. They haven't entered IMSA racing, certainly in recent years. They've had all sorts of WC efforts, not under the Alpine name. If they did, and they're not going to, certainly they're not on my even long list of teams that are looking towards Daytona, it would be 100% an LMP2. It's a Gibson engine car. It is an Oreca 07. It happens to be badged as an Alpine A470, and it has a chassis plate that says it's an Alpine A470, but it's an Oreca. It's exactly the same as the other cars in the LMP2 class in IMSA, and for that matter in the WEC, but they will not be coming, I'm afraid, to the Rolex 24 Hours at Daytona or to Sebring. Other than the fact that they'll be on the other side of the paddock, of course, in the WEC. I
do believe, though, we did have Matmut as a winning sponsor on Hugh de Schonak's Oreca Peugeot 908.
Oh, you did?
Sebring, right?
Oh, you did?
Didn't they?
Yeah.
So, we've got a little bit, but maybe...
Close.
All right, let's flip a coin now. Am I going to call Hugh, or are you going to call him and say, hey, time to dust off the 908 and bring it back to Daytona? That's a program I would get behind.
I actually saw that car racing in historic racing itself back in Peugeot factory livery. Fabulous, fabulous thing, and was taken through the cockpit with Nick Manassian and some hilarious stuff coming out there, including the button that says boost. Funny, it never said boost in period, but he did tell me what the button that says boost does, and it's fairly spectacular. But there you go.
All right.
One more, I think, here.
One more from IMSA. We'll send this your way. This comes in from Adam Van, who says, hi, GG and MP. IMSA question for you guys. Do you think we are entering a true North American era in sports car racing? I can't remember a time where I've seen so much Canadian content headed for IMSA's highest levels. As a Canadian myself, hashtag me personally, maybe this will help bring us a second IMSA race north of the border someday, ? Possibly to Mont Tremblant. It says, in support of above, to save you looking for the info, at least one Canadian driver among the winning driver pairing in each class at the Michelin Encore this past weekend, a Motorsport, FAF Motorsports into GTD next season. IMSA competitors 2018 and possible 2019 include Daniel Morad, Kyle Marcelli, Paul Dallalana, Scott Hargrove, Robichon, whose first name I'm forgetting, my apologies, Kuno Whitmer, Mark Wilkins, etc. Canadian invasion.
You got to be really careful here. National Guard will be there, mate.
Yes, unfortunately, invasion is a word that we hear too often in my beloved country.
Build a wall.
Build a wall. Well, we've allowed Canadian product extract Shea Adam in the country, so that's a good thing. No, granted, Florida's finest there. Adam,
it's a great thing, isn't it? It's a great thing to see so many more Canadians into IMSA. We've got a fair number actually making their way towards Europe, the global competition as well, including, of course, Paul Delalana of late. But we've had a couple of them in the ELMS as well, which has been good to see. It's becoming just a more cosmopolitan, more global scene. And I think it's good for IMSA that you've got nicer people from Canada, polite people.
Folks who know how to prepare for a bear attack as well, something we have not spoken of in a couple of months on the podcast, but very, very keen. I'll just say this, Adam. I think we're getting into a happier, better place in terms of more Canadian drivers, now teams as well. The AIM Autosport involvement with the Vassar Sullivan Lexus GTD program, awesome. FAF coming off of a rocking 2018 Imperial World Challenge with Scott Hargrove now coming over. Hargrove, someone whose talent, I hate to say, but is being wasted or will be wasted in IMSA. This is a kid who should be driving an IndyCar. But there's a lot of Canadian talent. Daniel Morad, someone who, again, just crazy amounts of talent, and I hope that he can gain some traction in IMSA and stay there, having done some impressive things already, just not on a super consistent basis. The other thing that comes to mind as well is, I was texting last weekend, received one from Montreal native Zachary Clayman DeMello. Not 100% sure if his IndyCar, I don't want to say career, I mean, he did about half the races last year, but what he had hoped would become an IndyCar career is going to continue in that direction next year. Could he end up more on the prototype or tin top side next year? I think that could be something that we hear about Graham. So that in theory might add another Canadian to what's happening in IMSA. The good thing, I would say, is it appears that there's an ongoing evolution and development of Canadian talent that is filtering down into major North American championships. In IndyCar, we had 3 Canadians at one point before Robert Wickens got hurt, but between himself and James Hinchcliffe and Clayman DeMello, so we haven't had that many Canadians in IndyCar in a super long time. So what appears to be IndyCar's loss next year, with maybe just back down to 1, if we were able to get Zach into IMSA, that would only be a positive thing. And there are others. There are certainly others who I think, as we were saying, also through IMSA's Porsche GT3 Cup series, there's quality. There's super quality there, Adam. That's a thing that I love. I've been a longtime fan of your country. Visited there dozens of times for races, mostly on the open wheel side, coming up in Atlantics and Indy Lights and IndyCar and so on. But yeah, love Canada, and really truly love the Canadians that we have in American racing here, because yeah, we get some good folks, some high quality folks, lots of character, a good sense of humor by and large. The ones that don't have proper senses of humor, I think, might be fake Canadians, might be fake news Canadians. So, but again, Graham, we're going to have to find a bear and see how they react. That'll reveal whether they are true Canadians or not.
Bears in disguise, not real Canadians. Really, that's what it is.
All right.
We've got a long list. We've got a long list of, it's like a wonderful box of chocolates that we can just pick our favourites for the remaining actual 20 minutes, I think.
Yes, and we are determined. We are determined to try and stay within.
Shall I run through some of the ones really quickly? We can answer really quickly.
Shall we start with general and end with fun?
Go from
we
there.
often do.
We can. Alan Rawle asked a couple of questions. Can you see Renault RSO 1 racing in 2019 in Blancpain, British GT, ELMS, WC, and the other series? And he also asked in car, will Toyota race with the new Supra? Right. No, the RSO1 won't race in those series because it's not homologated GT3 car, because there is no road car. With the Nissan GTR engine in the back of it. Fabulous looking thing. Very capable endurance racer, but not an homologated GT3. It has been built and balanced so that it can race in some series, including the Gravontic series, but no, you won't see that car there. Will Toyota race with the new Supra in car? Well, one, they'll definitely race in car unless something goes horribly badly wrong. What they'll race with, I think, remains to be seen. The current Supra, the new Supra, isn't really hypercar level. Bearing in mind that it and the brand new BMW Z4 in US money are one and the same platform. That's the kind of level we're talking about. So I think it would be probably something a little bit more highbrow. Whether or not that means that some Lexus DNA comes across, we'll wait and see. One possibly for you and I here, which is Jordan Hotwood asks, with Fernando Alonso's McLaren ties, do you think there's any chance of him doing any races with the new in-house McLaren 720 GT3? I think that's highly unlikely, is the honest answer. It's to do not least with politics within McLaren Group, McLaren Racing, which looks after the F1 program and only the F1 program. McLaren's motorsport side, which looks after the road-based stuff, are entirely separate entities within the same overall group. Is there a possibility? Maybe. Is there a probability? No.
Let's see. Let me pick one or two here. And Alan, by the way, your question about the Renault RS01, thank you for sending that in about 37 times. As we mentioned, we don't always get your questions, even after they've been resubmitted more than once, but we do our best to get to them. So your persistence as a listener to the questions you really want us to answer, if we don't get to it, don't be afraid to keep putting it in front of us. And by your second or third attempt, just throw in something hostile, because those are the things I love. Hey, you fat SOB, would you answer my damn question? That'll probably... Now, look, what every question next week is going to have, Pruett, you fat SOB. Let's see. Our friend Andrew Baca, Mr. Baxter, says, are there any drivers or teams who acted so badly in a race that you lost all respect for them and they can never recover it? He mentions, I still can't stand Jimmy Bruni after he intentionally wrecked Joey Hand at Sebring in 2012.
I'll give you a couple. It's not so much what they've done in a race as their attitude out of the car that tends to turn me off. We've talked about our good friend Christopher Buckett, who has a smile that can be described as sinister, Christophe Bouchou. The other one, I have to say, that I had just an unfortunate experience with, and I've never really got over that, and events later rather underlined it, was Fran Montani. And Frank has quite an odd attitude to life at the best of times, and did not endear himself to me after an interview that just did not lift off. And I got the impression that was Frank not giving an arse, to be honest with you, and that doesn't play very well with me. So Frank, even before his unfortunateness with substances that racing drivers or indeed anybody should not be actually taking, even before that, was not, I have to tell you, on the GG list of favourite people to spend time with. Do note, though, he has been making noises that he believes he might be back at Le Mans next year. We'll wait and see about that, Frank.
Well, the Le Mans Classic is gaining in popularity, so we wish him the best. Let's see. Boy, there's a couple to mention here, but I'll just go with... How about a recent one? And it would be overstated to say lost all respect and it can never be recovered, but it fits in the general theme just a few degrees cooler than that. Very recently at WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca, our friend Gustavo Jacquemin, he of Wandering Vehicle, managed to come together with Harry Tinknell and help take the victory away from Tinky Tink. And at the time, as we discussed, and I still hold this, that was very much Harry's fault. He knew that was a dog that always bites, and he played a little too fast, a little too reckless, trying to get around that dog at a place where he could be bitten, and was. Where things just got a little bit over the top for me, and I'll just mention this because I don't really give a bleep, is... that's Jacquemin's reputation. I didn't make it for him. He's made it by just running into all kinds of things. He's, I think, never been at fault. And when it was announced by his team that he would not be taking part in the season finale at Petit Le Mans, I wrote, which was accurate, because my source on it I will not reveal, but I'll just say 100% impeccable, said, yes, there was an active effort to make sure that he never drove this car again after the incident at Monterey, and wrote as such. Basically, the press release was meant to say that it was all budget and needed to pay for crash damage and just couldn't afford to be there. That may have been part of the story, and he may not have known the team had basically said right after the race, well, that's it, we're done. But I just simply wrote the truth, and then was the wonderful recipient of texts and emails from him, from a family member, asking me, telling me to change the story, how it was wrong, how I could damage his reputation. And it's, yeah, you just get to a point where you go, if there's something that's a bit of a differing of opinion, okay, I'll certainly look to revise the whatever it is if you can, show me that my opinion's wrong. Not a problem. Done it before. When this is just a blind, dude, what are you thinking? I know that Harry shouldn't have gone in there, but you were warned by your team. Let him go. You're 2 laps down at that point. I just found it truly comical for someone who, coming back to Andrew's question, I tried to give the benefit of the doubt. Always liked the kid. Doesn't mean I don't like him as a person. He's funny and amusing, but the continuing to say, okay, give him another chance. Yeah, after the heavy pushback and he claimed that the announcers said he wasn't at fault. I'm like, okay, just because someone else says they don't think you were wrong doesn't mean you weren't wrong. And the fact that you're trying to throw up all the subterfuge here, it just left me going, yeah, okay, maybe I just don't need to engage with that person's interactions a whole lot more going forward.
Fair point, really. One quick one here. It's a long question, but it can be kind of condensed pretty well. It comes from, not quite sure how we pronounce this one. It's BH2EFR, BHTOOEFR, who talks about the Prius GT300 car that took its bow, the mid-engine car, with the fabulous V8, used to do business in the back of a Lola in the Rebellion Racing days from Toyota, and with a road car derived but substantially enhanced hybrid system in GT300, that car in Super GT. That car has now been outlawed by regulation. Long question. What it comes down to is, given their success, what does it say about the prospects of future privateer hybrid systems, either in prototypes or in GT racing? I think it's a very good question. I'll give you my answer. The fact that we can now be talking about car at all with a capped level, commercial level for a hybrid system at something like €2 million per year for a 2-car team means we've made very substantial progress indeed about the accessibility of that technology. I know there's a lot of people in GT racing and the rule-making side of things that don't want that technology to be coming to GT racing anytime soon. But in terms of the level of accessibility, that development curve we talked about earlier in the show has had a knock-on effect here in bringing that technology closer to the point where its real-world availability for use in racing is becoming a lot more real. That's all I'd say about that.
Well, fine, be that way. Let's see. Let's try and grab a couple of final general questions. We have a lot of general. We also have a lot of fun, and I don't want to skip out on the usual fun because those questions often require a serious amount of question, thinking, brain activity that often befuddles me. Let's see. I'll go with Nathan Barnt. 4th time's the charm. What options do GT3 cars have for tweaking front downforce? I sometimes see GTE and LMPs with different dive planes, but never GT3. Boy.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I flat out don't know.
I'm trying to think, and the cop-out answer, which would be accurate, but it'd still be a little bit of a cop-out, is whatever is homologated. Meaning, whatever has been strictly approved. Our cat Rocky, by the way, is meowing. He's mad. I was supposed to feed him a half hour ago. Whatever has been strictly approved is all that is allowed. Now, granted, with the way things have gone, Graham, unfortunately, especially in prototype here in North America, I realize the question is not specific to North America, but just about everything I can think of has been homologated. The ability to do anything like, hey, we got an idea, we're going to cut it up and bolt it on for the next session and see how it works. Yeah.
No, you're not.
Yeah, so I realize that if it's homologated, it's probably as dumb an answer as one could come up with, because it's kind of a de rigueur for everything. But I would say, looking at the Lexus this past season, for example, I know that it had dive planes, or at least a dive plane up front. I can't say planes because I'm not remembering exactly if it was multiple, but I know, the Acura as well. NSX GT3 featured dive planes, so as long as it is something Mercedes as well, recall seeing dual dive planes on their car. There are options there to use. I would just say that, again, coming back to the question, they can use what they got as long as it has been approved. That's just maybe a little bit different from some other series where if you want to try it, you try it, and there's really no, I guess, rule intervention to prevent you from experimenting a little bit. Where else should...
I can lob one quick one. It's another Nathan Brown, who asks, over the years, IMSA and other sanctioning bodies have had varied results for street races. What's our favourite street circuit, past, present, and why? I put my hand up here and say I've never been to a street race anywhere in the world. The closest I've come to, it's the way it's worked. It's, there've been occasions when I've been covering a series that's had a street race. I just haven't been there. So British GT went to Po, for instance. FI GT3 went to the Bucharest circuit in Romania. I just wasn't there. As for my favourite, I quite like the old Birmingham circuit in the UK. Just because the story behind it is so engaging and, so involved. And it's still, to this day, it's one of those places where people get terribly starry-eyed about the mention of it. It got live TV in the UK. I remember that very vividly. Didn't make the meeting, but that's my rapid answer.
Let's see. I'll say Long Beach because it's obvious. I've been to it 20-plus times, so the specialosity, as we create a new word, the specialosity has certainly been reduced just by familiarity. But I would say outside of that, the one that I've mentioned before, Baltimore. Baltimore was just awesome. It was so great. Plus, I already loved that town before I'd ever been there. One of my all-time favorite TV shows, Homicide: Life on the Streets, was based in the same general harborfront area. Obviously, those who then watched the HBO's The Wire would also have some affinity for Boston, even though that was maybe a grittier side of it. But yeah, Baltimore, I should say. Baltimore was just awesome. So yeah, that's the one that, if I'm thinking modern affinity, it jumps out. I wish we could go back. But like many street circuits, Graham, you get 2 or 3 years and then you get nothing. So
yeah, but Bathurst doesn't count, does it? Even though it's a public road.
Correct. Nick Dovbiniak, and I might have murdered your last name, I apologize, Nick, asks, are there many vets working in sports car paddocks? The thing is, we don't have that many bears. You get a few dogs, but yeah, there's not often a need for animal care.
No.
Kidding aside, yeah, I would say that there's more and more. It's been really cool to learn about some of those who have served military, and this is, in whatever country we might be speaking of. Probably the best thing that I've seen happen of late, Nick, is what I believe is the growth and the increase of more military to motorsports type transition involvement, whether it's a nonprofit or otherwise, but just, hey, person who has had hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars invested in you by your government to do specialized things at a very high level. Boy, that sure sounds like motor racing, where often folks have to just gain experiential knowledge in how to do the thing. There's no actual hardcore educational aspect. So I would say that, while I don't have an exact answer on how many, I know that it would appear, Nick, that we should be able to say, yes, there are more and more military veterans coming in, because in general, their expertise, their discipline and way of doing things would certainly lend itself directly to working for a racing team in a variety of capacities.
Absolutely. In fact, this past Remembrance Weekend, we've had in the UK the Race for Remembrance, which has taken place now. I think it's 5 years now.
Yeah.
The Anglesey Circuit, which has a unique element to it, which is that the race takes part into parts, but as part of the second part of it, the cars go out for something like half an hour, 45 minutes. They then pit in the order in which they're running on track. And we have a remembrance ceremony in pit lane, and a very large number of injured veterans, as well as people who still serve, take part in that race meeting. I've been a part of that for 3 separate years, not managed to do it for the last couple of seasons. It is one of the most emotional occasions I've ever had the privilege to be a part of. Absolutely amazing. It's done by a UK-based charity, Mission Motorsports.
Yes.
They have links with US-based charities. I think Representative Greer was across for the race in Anglesey this year, which would be a great to have seen him. More and more, better and better. We've had some of those guys running cars at the Le Mans Classic. I know a couple of the guys were involved in the pit crew a couple of years ago for Aston Martin Racing, and they have had literally hundreds of men and women, some with physical disabilities caused through service, and some with some mental health challenges. And I know, because I've spoken to some of the families involved, the work that those organisations have done has literally saved lives. More and more, please. And if you see any opportunity to help more and more, please put yourself forward. I'll say one more thing, by the way. We do have one veteran that actually works for Daily Sports Car, and that is Martin Spetz, ex-Coastie. And Martin doesn't go on about his service, but
that is what to shut up. Yeah, all right,
absolutely.
Man, come on.
Yeah. But very proud and quite rightly so, sir.
No, we love ourselves some Martin Spetz, and great stories. But also, for those who know Martin, would say next time you see him, say thank you for his service. And I know that has become a bit of a trite thing that some folks just say to any veteran that they come across. But having seen, you and I both witnessed what Martin often goes through to offer and produce photographs for Daily Sports Car, yep, with knees that our abs have been pounded to, powder during his service, back problems, true physical hammering over the years in serving, that just to do what he does, to make us happy with photos, to enrich dailysportscar.com, you realize that, it's not like me just throwing my camera bag over my back, walking out to a corner shoot and having fun coming back. There's pain, there's planning, and there's endurance and mental fortitude with everything Martin does. So that's why we love him, but also so appreciative of what he does. And I also am very thankful of my military veteran in our household, who so far, through 16 years of knowing one another, she has woken up every morning and decided to not kill me. So I just want to say it out loud. Thanks to my Marine for deciding so far, could change, just saying so far, she's let me be alive. So pretty good there. Let's jump over. Apologize here. We are at approximately an hour and a half. We are going to have to either beg your forgiveness for going overtime slightly, or if you're going to hold us to the word that I've broken already, now's the end of the show. But don't be surprised if you hear words continuing to speak. Let's go to some fun stuff here, and we will pick and choose as we try and do. Again, we've got 7 pages of questions, which, yet again, thank you for your support here. And press release might be going out tomorrow, Graham, and press release sounds way too formal. Could be a little bit later in the week, but ask my friend Matt Cleary from the Sunday Group to put together just a brief press release thanking everyone and alerting everyone that we did late last week cross 2 million downloads on the MP podcast, and that is honestly one of the reasons that we got to that as quickly as we did. My goal this year, we had 1 million downloads from when the podcast started in May of 2016 through the end of December 2017. It was like the 12/28 or so where we reached the first million. So more or less you could say the clock started on the next million on January 1, more or less. We reached that in 10 months and I think 7, 8, 9 days. And I can tell you this is not just blowing smoke, but adding in the weekend sports cars, which we did the week after the Rolex 24, the beginning of February, it's been a big help. It's helped press, mash the throttle on adding more traffic. So thank you again, and we'll have a little release here just celebrating that. But okay, I'm going to go with Doug Bonham. It's 1990. MP Racing and GG Motorsports have just been contracted to become new factory teams in IMSA GTO. What model do you turn into a tube frame, flame-throwing monster? Since, Graham, we had Fords, we had Mazdas, we had a few different models. Nissan was there. We had a couple of Japanese manufacturers. We had a couple of American manufacturers. There was there was a little bit of playing and fun, but for the most part, a little bit light on Europe when it comes to tube frame, GTO era flamethrowing monsters. So I'm going to give this one to you, brother. Going back in time, what European mark?
It's going to be the Austin Allegro, without a shadow of a doubt. It's a car of, what can you say? There are very few people that experience the wonder that was the Austin Allegro that don't to this day, when you mention those words, Austin and Allegro, in the same sentence, don't develop some kind of facial tic. And I think as a tube frame with a fire-breathing, briefly, before it caught fire, V8 from the Rover brand, wouldn't want to set the damn thing on fire.
Well, the Mazda, I believe, had the fire part covered. James Counter. James asks, what's your favorite racing photo?
Oh, that's a good one. I've got two, really quickly. One is from our good friend Regis Lefebvre, and it's a photograph. I will try and find these, by the way, and pop them onto the Facebook page. It's a photo he took in the early part of this century at Le Mans, and it's a ghosted pit stop with an Audi R8. And I still don't know how he did it. And it's a beautiful shot where you get this ghostly image of the car coming to a halt, but the pit crew are in absolute harmony and pin sharp. I don't know how he did it. It's a brilliant, brilliant shot. There's another Regis one, by the way, I've just remembered, which was a Rocket Sports, oddly enough, tube frame Jaguar at the Rolex 24, backlit by the side-piped exhausts reflecting off the white wall of Daytona. It's another beautiful, beautiful shot. But my standout favourite will mean nothing to anybody other than followers of the British GT Championship, or indeed people who used to work at the Silverstone Racing Drivers School, is a driver called Steve Warburton. Used to be the chief instructor there, had a terrible day in his Porsche Cup car at Castle Combe, ended up in the cornfield, which is the middle of the circuit, and the picture is, you can just see the top of the Porsche, and you can see Steve looking not very happy with his day, and that one never fails to raise a chuckle with me, or indeed anybody else that knows him. They're the three.
I will volunteer my favorite, all-time favorite. It is haunting. It is everything to me. And that was a photo taken by one of my photography heroes, Jesse Alexander, of Jim Clark climbing out of his car after completing the 1962 Belgian Grand Prix. And it's just a candid shot of Clark, face clearly marked and lined by dirt and dust, having pulled his goggles down around his neck, and it's just everything. It's haunting. It's brilliant. It is more than just a window into the man. Over and done. And there's another one, and I don't have it in front of me, but it was one taken by Louis Klementowski of 1950s era. I forget which driver, and again, I apologize here, but it's a pan where it just feels like you are in the cockpit of the vehicle. And this is an era where photographers were effectively the trackside safety paraphernalia, where if you hit something, the photographer would at least slow you down on the way to the earth embankment. I mean, this is taken when photographers were inches, if not a foot away from cars, apexing at a zillion miles an hour with no railing in between them. But just truly amazing. And then after that, I believe it's a Jesse Alexander photo as well, which is named the Drivers' Meeting. And it was just that, a Formula One drivers' meeting from the 60s. And it has every hero among hero standing, waiting for this drivers' meeting to start. And you just realize that you start naming the names, and you understand that, barring very few of them, this is, most of the folks in the frame are all part of, 50 greatest Formula One drivers ever type list. So there are others. There's one of Vukovic in the garages at Indy. I think it might have been the 40s, where it is just the abject picture of failure and defeat expressed in a man's body, just hanging like a drape while sitting. I mean, there are some others that are just, well, I shouldn't say others. There are so many that are just incredibly evocative. I'm glad you mentioned Regis. One of the things that Regis does that few other photographers can do is bring genuine emotion into the imagery. There are many who are excellent photographers, artists, and the photo itself is pure art. You might not say that it has emotion included. So that's one of the things that Regis definitely is a clear leader in the industry that I know. Let's see. How about Tim Same? A question from Dan Anda. What moment in sports cars this year do you want to see reenacted as an opera or musical theater production? Which actors or actresses would you cast for the lead parts? Something tells me that The Magnus Story would be a good off-Broadway production. I'll throw one out because I think you might agree. Land Motorsport, Daytona edition. I think there might be some fun. The Land Motorsport fuel cell refueling Broadway production. I love the idea of Peter Barron, Wolfgang Land, I believe that's his first name, IMSA's technical staff, race director. That just seems like if you had an actual moment-by-moment
12 Angry Men.
SMS exchange, transcription of the conversation. I mean, that almost seems like you wouldn't actually have to write the play, just acquire the words that were spoken back and forth, and you would have something that was captivating to watch and kind of funny.
Well, yeah, and also, here's the rub. Have you ever seen Peter Barron and Gene Wilder in the same room?
Ah, good point. Well, but you can tell... if it was, you would know that it was Barron because the toenails would be painted some sort of color.
Correct.
Flip-flops. So, where else should we go among the
I'm just going to, a quick answer to Ryan Terpstra. Was helping his son clean up his Matchbox cars, found a Porsche 917. Is it okay that makes its way into his collection? The answer is no, you dreadful individual. You must send it to me immediately, and I'll make sure that the right thing is done. Or social services are going to be called, Ryan. Outrageous stuff. So I'll drop my address, just pop it along, and we'll deal with that one for you. Lucky you asked, actually.
All right, we're a little bit over an hour 40. Let's be choosy here. Let's see.
I'll get a quick one from Right Turn Lover. Quick one.
Yeah.
Been asked a lot about the most awesome or ugly race cars, which are the blandest winning cars you can remember. I'm going to give you 3 letters. BWP. Boring white Porsche. So many races, so many Porsche 911s, so many of them white, with limited kind of inspiration being shown towards the liveries. So boring white Porsche, I'm afraid, is the blandest thing in sports car racing. Happily, we don't see very many of those anymore.
No, and I'll just throw mine in quickly because I happen to come across an image of one while searching through old photographs, and it really struck me that this was actually a thing. Back in the late 2000s, GM decided in the Grand Am Rolex series in its GT category that it needed to rebody the Pratt & Miller cars as Pontiac GXP dash whatever R's. It was, and again, beneath the shell was a full Pratt & Miller GT amazing type thing. And it had, we had it became a Camaro. It was another, it had shapes on
the
it.
GTO body, didn't it?
Yes,
It was the older Monaro.
Yes, yes, GTO. And then it became a GXPR, which, if we go back to Ryan's question, it looked like someone put a Hot Wheel in the microwave and kind of melted it a little bit. It is just the thing where you look at it and go, no, don't do this. This is the lamest street car ever. Don't do this to your Pratt Miller chassis. So, Right Turn Lover, I would say that for me was just come on, man. Everybody hates the road car. Why are you making a race version out of it? And that model
People who bought it hated it.
Yes, that model quickly disappeared and died the death that it deserved. So, Buddy Campbell says you've mentioned the band Mastodon a couple times over the past month or so in the Week in IndyCar and the Week in Sports Cars. What is your favorite Mastodon song? Buddy, I'll throw in that their song Quintessence from Crack the Sky, SKYE, is certainly the one that I seem to go to quite often. And I know you're a massive Mastodon fan, Graham, so regale us.
I have no clue, but I will tell you this. From my one and only outing ever at a banger race, we ended up with a Demolition Derby, which was last weekend with the chaps. And my favourite band is a band called The Damned.
Which you've mentioned before, which we love.
I have.
So,
and boy, oh boy, what happens? But a Volvo, I think it was a 240 estate car, station wagon comes by, liveried up with The Damned. I could just say it didn't end well. It didn't end well.
All right. Well, how's this?
It didn't come around a second time.
Well, I'm going to make an executive decision here. Shay Adam, thank you for sending in a slightly edited version of your question. We will do our best to remember to paste this into next week. We are trying to be good monkeys and not go beyond our roughly hour and a half time here. Graham, why don't we close? Because the example is posed with me, but I want to get thoughts about you. Maybe throw this out to a hashtag thing to our listeners from M.W. Clarkson. You want to read that one? Because we need to incorporate some GG into it.
Let's go for it. Got to mention last week, and he wants to continue his run. Well, you're going to. For 1 week, any week, you're able to swap your co-presenter with an active racing driver from any series. They get to share the TWISC booth with you. Your co-presenter has to take over their role. Who would you swap with and why? He says he'd temporarily swap you, Marshall, with Craig Lowndes. It'd be great to hear Lowndesy on the show. Even better to see the in-car footage of Marshall trying to wrestle a V8 supercar around the top of Mount Panorama.
See, first of all, Mr. Clarkson, back in the day, I was a halfway, extremely average, possibly not very good race car driver. So I will state up front, do not mock my lack of talent because it's been proven. Provided I was half the size, I would relish the thought of taking one of Lowndesy's V8s across the mountain, having been to Bathurst, having been on a lap in a Holden, I forget what, but something very fast and V8 road car with Marino Franchitti as my pilot, and having watched dozens upon dozens, probably 50 plus hours of Bathurst 1000s just on DVD or on whatever. I think I know the mountain well enough to where I would not crash instantly. I would be crying the entire time, and we would keep the microphone open so you could hear just me sobbing the whole way. I would love to do this, and I try and keep my belief that I am not that bad in check, but I think I could actually do an okay job as someone who has been involved in the sport on the engineering side as a driver coach, as a driver for a while, not that long. I think I could do it and not drastically embarrass myself. And that would probably mean 20 seconds off the pace. But I still think that would be 20 seconds off the pace of Lounsey, which I think anybody could do, would still make me feel okay about myself. But that's a great example, and I would agree. If I had the money, I'd pay Lowndes to do this more often than he does right now, which is 0. But what I really want to hear, Gigi, is your thoughts on whose hot rod and what would you like to drive it, and who do you think would be an excellent swap for you for a week? And also,
for me for a week.
Yeah, dear listeners, you can throw in ideas for me as well. Not saying you shouldn't, but I think since one example has been offered, we'd love to see a hashtag on who should replace Graham.
So I've got to go and do their job. That's what we're saying.
A race car driver for the week. And Hindy, for example, Hindy gets out and drives a couple of races, once or twice a year. My friend Will Buxton gets out and does a little bit of stuff. There are a number of journalists who have the chops, who don't come from the driving side, who have demonstrated aptitude.
My biggest problem, I'm afraid, is that I've got the awful combination of having absolutely no fear and absolutely no talent, and that is a really dangerous combination, as my general practitioner, my doctor will tell you, because that did leave me with a permanent injury when I did used to kind of do a little bit of work on circuits. Because I was there teeing up something for you, but I didn't expect that one. No. Let's have a quick think. So I'd have to go and do their job. What would I actually like to do in racing?
Well, but driving, I assume if we stay in this lane, since it was a Lounsey for MP swap.
It was.
What car do you want to race? Whose car do you want to race? Where? But keep in mind, we also have to believe the person replacing the fine vocal stylings of Graham Goodwin would be able to ably spend an episode with me, either not just fumbling or going meh, or just cursing the entire time.
I'd like to find out what Christophe Bouchou's doing at the moment.
Oh, you hate me that much. That is how much you hate me. All right, man. I see how it is. Yeah. Yeah, okay, buddy. Yes.
Dear me. I'm tempted to say let's swap with Fernando, because at least then you'd actually get some quality time with him to find out what's actually going on without the filter. But
well, if we're doing it, okay. Then I want to swap you for Scott Tucker, and you can drive the little Hannibal Lecter dolly that he's strapped to. That could be your thing, and I'll have Scott on for the week. SOB. I see how
that means. That means I have to drive his little library trolley. He's offering books up and down the cell wing. That's.
Good Lord. All right. Well, I don't know if we've answered this one, but this is a great closing hashtag opportunity. Who should swap with Graham for a week on the Week in IndyCar, keeping in mind that they would have to suffer speaking with me for an hour and a half, which we don't really ever stick to. But Graham would then have to climb in their car and drive it. So give us some ideas, folks. Hashtag who should replace Graham. And I'm hoping for those who don't listen regularly, we might create the false impression that we're trying to replace you, which would be even funnier. So, although not the case, but I'm considering it now with the Bouchou reference. You bleepity bleep. All right. Well, thank you again to everybody, seriously, for helping us get across that 2 million mark. Thank you, as always, to our friends on Reddit, on Facebook, and on Twitter. Thank you to Cooper Tires for making this podcast possible, and thanks to you, Graham. Folks might get tired of hearing this, but I say it because it's genuine. This is fun, man. You and I do a lot of things. I know you do a lot of things where it is work. Feels like work, looks like work, has all the leanings of work. This never feels like it. This is just fun, and I think it's so much because the great questions we get, and then even though you want me to spend a week with an episode with the world's most hated French racing driver, all that stuff aside, thanks again, brother. This is just a blast.
All good fun. Great stuff. We will see you next week, and hopefully, Chinese internet and connectivity willing, I'll be talking to you from Shanghai.